Well, hello. Welcome to the Brand Marketing Show. Kath Langman here with you. And now, before we get into this week's episode, I want to ask you something. If you are like many people that I know, founders that I know right now, been staring at your Meta ads dashboard since March, really, quietly wondering whether you've simply forgotten how to do marketing, then this episode is for you because the reality is you haven't forgotten. The platform has literally changed underneath you yet again, and not in a way that's been super kind to premium brands. And I think you really deserve to know exactly what's happened and why it's specifically hurting brands like yours and what's actually working now for premium e-commerce brands really navigating this situation. This is not going to be something like a 5 hot meta tips for Q2 type of episode. What I have is probably a slightly indignant explanation of a real structural problem, an honest framework for thinking about it, and a couple of concrete things that you can actually do this week to help your brand and your advertising. So maybe go pour yourself a cup of tea, grab a comfy chair, and let's dive in. And let's start with actually what happened, because most of the conversation about this online has either been really technical and impenetrable to most brand owners, or really vague and slightly hand wavy. Neither is super helpful when you are trying to make decisions about your business or about your advertising and marketing efforts. So at the early March, Meta restructured its entire attribution model. By attribution, it's like how are they actually measuring results and attributing it to the particular campaigns that you're running. And there were 3 changes that shipped together. I'll try and translate them out of platform techie speak so that they actually mean something for everybody. So the first change was the click-through attribution. So the thing that your dashboard counts as a conversion from an ad now only counts as an actual link click, which seems obvious, and it's probably what many business owners have assumed was the case all along, but it wasn't. Because until early March, lots of other interactions counted as a click through as well. For example, if someone saved your ad, that counted. If someone liked it or shared it, that counted. But as of March, or even if somebody clicked the see more blue hyperlink text, that counted. But as of March, those don't count anymore. Only link clicks count as a click-through. The second change, actually, let me back up. I mean, if you've ever wondered why Meta Ads dashboard is telling you got all of these clicks and you don't have that many visitors to your website and wondered why it just doesn't add up, that would be why. Anyway, the second change, Meta introduced a new metric called engage through attribution. And this catches some of what the click-through no longer does. Things like saves, shares, likes, and comments. But with one really brutal limitation, that engage through attribution only has a 1-day window. So for example, if someone saves your ad on a Monday and converts on a Tuesday, then the engage through attribution is going to catch that and measure it for you. But if they save it on a Monday and convert on Thursday, it does not. The attribution window closes after 24 hours. And so you really have no idea then about the fact that the ad actually worked, because it's not going to tell you that in your dashboard. And then the third change, the video engaged view threshold. So the amount of time someone has to watch your video for it to be counted as an engaged view was halved from 10 seconds to 5. Which, I mean, what kind of content can you consume in 5 seconds? That's not the headline change, but it is worth noting because it does change how the algorithm reads watch time signals. So what this looks like on your dashboard since early March is probably your ROAS, your return on ad spend, appears to have dropped. Your cost per acquisition appears to have spiked. Some campaigns look like they've stopped working entirely. And here's the part that nobody is really saying clearly enough. Your ads are probably working roughly the same as they did in February. It's just that the reporting stopped counting half of what's happening. And the honest read on why Meta made this change is, and this will surprise absolutely no one, it benefits Meta. The new engage through model feeds more conversion signals to Meta's algorithm. Moving saves and shares out of click-through and into a model with a one-day window means that advertisers who want full visibility into their conversion activity now have to opt into the model that Meta wants them on. And that's not nefarious. It's a strategic decision Meta has made about how to optimize its own platform. But it's also not exactly a gift to advertisers. And I think we all should be honest about that for our own benefits, right? So that's what happened. And now I want to tell you why this hits premium brands the hardest, because not all brands are equally affected by these changes. And the asymmetry of who gets hurt is the part of the story that I haven't really heard anyone talking about yet. And to explain this, I think I need to just briefly walk you through how a premium buyer actually shops, not how Meta thinks he or she shops, but how she really does shop. A premium buyer does not behave like a person who is maybe 3 drinks in on a Tuesday evening scrolling Amazon or Temu. She sees you. What she actually does is she sees your ad probably while she's half watching the news and stirring something on the stove, for example. Obviously, that's my age bracket, but the equivalent of that in whatever your demographic is. She'll probably save it either literally or in her head. And then she will conduct what I can only describe as a royal commission on your brand. She'll go and open 4 browser tabs. She'll check your reviews on a platform like Product Review. She'll probably have a look at, maybe a discreet lurk somewhere like Reddit. She might ask, even, more and more these days, ChatGPT what it thinks. She might watch a couple of TikTok videos, reviews from women who look a little bit like her. She'll definitely sleep on it. And then 3 days later, she will convert, but often by Googling your brand name directly and often without ever clicking the original ad again. Now, why does she do this? And I mean, the humorous quip is because she's a grown woman with a few $100s to spend, and quite frankly, she would like to know what she's spending on. Thank you very much. But this entire performance, this slow, careful, considered, multi-channel validation journey is exactly what makes premium buyers the customers actually worth having, because they are considered. And that thought process makes them highly loyal. They typically have much higher average order values. They have far fewer return orders and a working memory longer than 24 hours. They do not, as a rule, click on, links and make impulse purchases. And as of March, Meta has decided not to count any of that. Let me walk you through the carnage in slow motion. She saw your ad. That used to count, sort of. It was an impression. Now it just sits there. She saves it. That used to count as a click-through. It does not anymore because she did not click a link. The save did briefly trigger engage through attribution, but the one-day window closed at midnight on the day she saved. She took 3 days, like, a self-respecting adult who would like to make a thoughtful purchase decision. So by the time she came back to convert, the engage through window had expired. So Meta now sees an impression and no conversion. Your Meta ads dashboard quietly weeps. Google or direct traffic gets credit for the sale. The Meta ad that genuinely started the whole journey gets nothing, not even a thank you note. Now compare this to a brand selling cheap, impulse-friendly products. Their customer sees the ad, clicks immediately, and converts within the hour. Click-through fires perfectly, reporting looks really clean. These brands recovered if they were even impacted by that March meta change within a very short period of time. You know, that kind of a change probably barely touched them because their customers were always clicking through and purchasing within 24 hours anyway. Premium brands are still being punished by it 2 months later, and they will keep being punished by it because the way considered buyers shop simply does not fit this new measurement system, no matter how much Meta wants to force them to do so. So when I say that this is structural, not glitchy, I mean this is not a reporting bug that's going to be fixed in a software update. This is a fundamental mismatch between the way Meta now measures attribution and, to be extra clear, the way Meta optimizes and improves ad results is based on the data that is attributed, right? So the way it now measures attribution and the way premium customers actually behave are fundamentally mismatched. Meta's measurement is currently optimized for that person who is 3 drinks in on a Tuesday evening scrolling Temu, and your customer is not that person. And by every metric that actually matters, AOV, repeat purchase rate, lifetime value, advocacy, returns, thank God she's not. Now zoom out with me for a moment because this March change is not actually the story, believe it or not. It is just the latest example of a much bigger pattern, and the bigger pattern is what I really want you premium brand founders to actually understand. Every quarter, sometimes even more frequently, these platforms quietly change the rules. Sometimes they talk about it and sometimes they don't. And it's not just Meta, Google, TikTok, Instagram, all of them. Sometimes it is an attribution change like this one. Sometimes it's an algorithm shift like the Andromeda rollout last year. Sometimes it's a creative tooling update or a new ad format or an old ad format being deprecated or an old widget that comes back sometimes. Sometimes, and this is the worst kind, it's a change so quiet that nobody actually announces it and you just notice your numbers slipping for reasons you actually can't articulate. And the cumulative effect of all of this over years is that founders running their marketing alone are running faster and faster, getting more and more exhausted, watching their numbers slide and just not knowing why. They blame their creative, they blame their agency, they blame themselves, they might blame their own product or whether it is actually good enough that customers want to buy it. They might buy another course, they might switch platforms, they try the next hot thing that they see people talking about, and none of it ever quite fixes the problem because the problem was never actually tactical. If you have felt, maybe even for the last 18 months, like you are running faster in your business and just getting nowhere, like you're literally on a treadmill, then, the reality is that you are. It's not your imagination and it's not laziness. It is a marketing treadmill, and I think these platforms are running it. I think the structural, honest read on this, which almost nobody's going to tell you outright, is that the pace of platform change is not actually possible for one person as a founder who's also doing all the other things in the business to keep up with on top of running every other part of the brand. And that, that's not a personal failing. It's just because of this rapid pace of change, it's just impossible. Anyway, and to be honest, I do think it matters that we say that out loud just so that, you're not the only person in that position, right? The marketing industrial complex has a vested interest in selling you the next tactic, the next course, the next build a 7-figure premium brand in 90 days with AI doing all the hard work promise. None of those things really solve the treadmill problem. They just make the treadmill go a little bit faster and they keep you distracted enough and busy enough to feel like, you're doing something constructive, I guess. But that brings me to the part of this episode where I want to talk about what does not fix this, because I see a lot of premium brand founders and I speak to a lot of them every week reacting to the changes like what happened in March in ways that aren't going to help. And I would like to spare you some of that wasted effort if I can. Better creative will not fix this. Now, I am all for better creative, right? Creative still matters enormously, and we will come back to that in a moment. But better creative cannot compensate for a measurement system that is biased against your customers' actual shopping behavior. You can make the world's most beautiful ad. If your customer takes 3 days to validate and convert via a Google search, Meta will still not count it. Things like switching agencies probably won't fix this either, because every agency in the country and around the world is dealing with the same platform changes. Switching is just changing whose face delivers the same news in your monthly reports. Spending more isn't going to fix this. And I really can't stress this enough. More spend on a measurement system that is currently biased against you just buys you more bias. And you'll see exactly the same proportional underreporting just on a bigger number. And here's one that you will hear a lot at the moment because it's the loudest advice in the meta ads world right now. More creative volume also will not fix this. The dominant advice in 2026 is that you need to ship 30, 50, 100 new ad variations a month, and not just variations, but, differentiated creatives. Just keep throwing things at the algorithm until something hits. Feels a bit like throwing spaghetti at the wall, doesn't it? For premium brands, though, at sub 50K monthly ad spend, which is a lot of you, probably the majority, this is not realistic. And more importantly, it's not the actual problem. You can ship 100 variations of weak messaging and the algorithm still cannot make them work. The algorithm does not fix bad messaging, and it does not change the way a customer makes that purchase decision. It's just going to test lots of creative more efficiently if you spend more. The build a 7-figure premium brand in 90 days with Claude's help promises are especially bad in this environment. And I'm not going to name names, there's courses out there and coaches and loads of so-called experts that assume the platforms are friendly to premium brands, and the platforms are not right now especially friendly to premium brands. So you are essentially being sold a system that's already failing. And finally, and this one might be the hardest for some listeners to hear because Lord knows we have all been there, another course will not fix this. And I say this as someone who has and still does teach courses. Some courses are genuinely useful, but the treadmill problem is not a knowledge gap. You can know everything about Meta and still be exhausted and behind because the platforms are still going to keep changing. And it's a strategic problem, not a knowledge problem most of the time. Obviously, if you know absolute zip about running ads, then of course, learning's going to help, but not for this particular issue, right? And the two require very different solutions. So there's not going to be a clever tactic. There's not going to be a new ad format. There's not a course that you can buy that's going to solve this particular problem. This is a strategic problem dressed up as a tactical one. And I think when you can see that clearly, you can, slow that treadmill down a little bit and stop trying to solve it with effort and start solving it with structure. So what does work for premium brands right now? Because I don't want to leave you feeling hopeless or like it's all doom and gloom and nothing is possibly going to get you out of it. The strategic shift here is real, and you might want to take some notes on this bit. I'm going to walk you through five shifts that really do matter and help. They're connected by one principle that I really want you to hold in your mind throughout. And in fact, this should be your guiding light as a business owner anyway. And that principle is stop trying to keep up with what's changing every day and find what doesn't change and build your business and your brand around that, certainly with your marketing. And I think the first thing is a measurement shift. So stop treating your Meta ads dashboard reported ROAS, return on ad spend, as the source of truth for your business, because it is not. It has not been for a long time. at that March change has made that brutally obvious. Move your primary measurement to MER, which stands for Marketing Efficiency Ratio, and that is a total revenue divided by total ad spend, and also to blended customer acquisition cost. Both of these come from your Shopify data, not from your Meta dashboard or your Google dashboard or wherever you spend money on ads. Both reflect what is actually happening in your business and not what a platform decides to count or not count. Use Meta's ROAS as a directional signal for individual campaigns, but never let it be the headline number that actually determines whether your marketing is working. The second is a role shift. Stop treating Meta. This is for premium brands. If you are a mass market brand, impulse buying, discount strategy type brand, this is not for you. But if you are a premium brand, stop treating Meta as a closing channel, because it is not. For your customer, Meta is a seeding and discovery channel. The actual conversion happens later, often elsewhere, after the validation journey. And if you think of Meta as the channel that drives the sale, you're going to keep being disappointed by the reporting. But if you think, and you just keep spending truckloads of money on expensive sales campaigns that just don't deliver enough of a return. But if you think of Meta as the channel that puts your brand on your customer's radar, which then triggers that multi-channel validation process that eventually results in a sale, the picture is much more accurate and much more navigable. The third shift is the foundation shift, and this is potentially the most important one in this episode. The customer is what doesn't change. Platforms change, algorithms change, ad formats change, attribution changes, but your customer's psychology, what she needs to know, understand, and believe before she's going to trust you with her money, is remarkably stable. And the premium buyer in 2026 is, in the ways that actually matter, the same as the premium buyer in 2024. So spend the time to really understand your high-value customers, not the generic ideal customer avatar from the launch deck. Your actual customers, the women or men buying from you, the ones leaving you reviews, the ones repeat purchasing, the ones referring their friends. What do they have in common? What language do they use? What were they almost not going to do and what made them do it in the end? What do they need to know? That's the rational factual layer, things like ingredients, features, provenance, what's actually in the box. What do they need to understand? That's the why it matters layer, why your brand exists, why this product is for her specifically, why this category, this price point, this approach makes sense for her life. And what do they need to believe? This is the trust layer, that you are who you say you are, that the product will actually do what you say it does, that you'll be there if something goes wrong, that spending this much on this thing is a decision that she can defend to herself. When you have all of that, you have something stable to build everything else around, and that is the work that, once done, actually compounds for you. The fourth shift is what flows from the foundation. Messaging, infrastructure, and campaign architecture all become more coherent. Messaging first. Once you know what she needs to know, understand, and believe at each stage of her buying journey, your messaging stops being a quarterly creative refresh exercise, or frankly, a monthly or even weekly one these days, and it becomes a stable architecture. The creative formats can change, but the same message, different format, different platform, different length, but the messaging itself does not move. That's the difference between brands that look frantic and brands that look composed. The composed ones are not smarter, they just have a more stable foundation and everything else can adapt around it. Infrastructure next. Premium buyers conduct that royal commission on your brand. They go looking for different information at different stages of their buyer journey. branded Google search for the moment she's checking that your brand exists, and probably when she comes back to buy from you as well. But, she goes looking elsewhere for product reviews. For the moment, she's looking for credibility from other customers, not from the brand itself. TikTok search for the moment, she wants to see your product in real people's lives. Maybe AI search results like ChatGPT or Perplexity or Google AI overviews for when she's either asking for a recommendation in your category or comparing different options in your category. Each of these is a different stage of her journey, and each needs a different kind of information from you. And so the infrastructure is the practical follow through on the messaging architecture, and it's where she finds what she needs to find. And then this is the bit that I try and push back on a lot and pretty hard at the moment: campaign architecture. Because the dominant meta advice right now is, of course, to consolidate everything into Advantage Plus shopping campaigns. Just throw all of your budget into one ASC, really go, a lot harder with the sales messaging in there, lots of different creative options. Let Meta figure out the rest, let Meta distribute between new cold prospecting and warm existing customer retargeting audiences. And, the idea is that we're supposed to just sit back and watch the magic happen. For premium brands with considered customers, this is so wasteful. And let's be honest why. ASC optimizes for the conversion event. We've just established that for considered premium buyers, the conversion event is structurally under-attributed in the post-March model. So you're optimizing spend towards a metric that's lying about the actual volume of conversions happening. And more damaging than that, ASC doesn't distinguish between different stages of your customer's journey. It treats top of funnel, cold press prospects and ready to buy warm audiences the same way. For an impulse buyer, that's completely fine. The journey is really short, but for a premium buyer with a multi-day or multi-week or even multi-month validation process, it is really not fine. She needs different messaging at the discovery stage, the consideration stage, and the trust building stage, and the conversion stage. So throwing everything into ASC means you're not feeding the algorithm the right signal at the right stage, and you're not giving her the right message at the right moment. Premium brands at the sub 50K monthly ad spend on Meta cannot afford to lose money to this kind of structural waste. Honestly, I mean, which brand can afford to lose money to Meta or anywhere else these days? So you need campaign architecture that respects her journey, and that means top of funnel campaigns earning engagement signals through entertaining, non-salesy content that actually stops the scroll and engages them for a period of time, mid-funnel consideration campaigns that address her specific objections, conversion campaigns with closing messaging, retargeting that's actually structured, not a default Meta automation. Each campaign earning its own clean signal, each stage of her journey being given the messaging it actually needs. And then the fifth shift is the mindset shift. And this is where I want to leave you with a little bit of hope, because I know that everything I've said so far has been a wee bit grim today. Here is the genuine hope in this episode. The reason all of this feels so exhausting right now is that you are trying to chase the platforms. And the moment you stop chasing the platforms and start building on what doesn't change your customer, that exhaustion lifts. You're allowed to make this easier for yourself, not because there's less work overall necessarily, but because the work compounds instead of evaporating every time the platform changes its mind. The premium brands that you can see staying composed through this March, April, May chaos are not smarter than you. They're not paying more than you. They're not running cleverer campaigns or have some kind of secret insider information. What they do have is that stable foundation because they built it and now it does the work for them. I don't think people want, talk about this because the marketing industrial complex does not benefit from telling you this stuff. You can have a marketing business that does not feel like running on a treadmill. It requires a different kind of work, the foundational work, and it requires either the time and the discipline to do that work yourself or the strategic support to do it with someone, but it's genuinely possible. there is that, a much calmer way to do this. It does not look like the way most premium brands are currently being told to do it, but it does. It is a possibility. And I want to just briefly share share with you what it looks like in practice. Our brand Indagare Natural Beauty is a great example here, and it's probably one of the cleanest examples I have with what this strategic shift looks like when you're actually building it. For anyone that doesn't know, Indagare, it's a premium clean skincare brand for women aged 35, 40 and above. It's definitely a considered purchase product category, not just because of the fact that it's a clean skincare. I mean, people do typically take time to decide to try new skincare. They're going to put it on their face, right? And when you're trying to choose that online versus in a shop where you can actually test it on your skin, that is, it's going to be a considered product category. But also just the nature of the brand itself, it's not a price point or a brand positioning that is an impulse buy, right? So it's going to be a considered purchase. And on top of all of that, it's one of the most competitive product categories that one could choose to advertise in. I don't want to start with what we did on Meta in March. I want to start with what we did 18 odd months ago, because that's the work that's now letting us navigate this post-March chaos without the panic. So the shift for Indagare started when we took the time to really research our specific audience, not the generic ideal customer avatar from the launch deck, our actual high-value customers, the women already and men already buying from us, the ones that were leaving us the amazing, really lengthy reviews, the ones coming back for multiple purchases, not just second or third, but 10s, 20s, the ones referring their friends. What we were looking for were the common threads. What do these customers have in common in how they describe their skin and hair, how they describe their values, their hesitations, their priorities? What language and wording do they use when they talk about why they bought? What were they almost not going to do, and what made them do it in the end? What do they need to know, understand, and believe, therefore, about us before they'll trust us enough to go ahead? And this took time. It was not a one afternoon workshop. It did require a lot of effort. It was talking to customers. It was multiple questionnaires and survey processes. It was, reading lots and lots of thousands of reviews. It was really mining all of the customer service inquiries. It was really listening to what high value customers said and how they said it. And once we had that foundation, we had a much more stable foundation. We knew what to say at each stage of her buying journey. We knew where she would go looking for different pieces of information about us. We knew which objections needed to be addressed in what language and at what point in the journey. And so our messaging stopped depending on which creative direction was trending. Our infrastructure stopped depending on which platform was supposedly winning that quarter. Our campaign architecture stopped depending on Meta's latest opaque optimization. Everything we built had a stable referent, our customer and what she actually needs. That foundation is what's allowed everything else to flow, and it's what's made this March attribution change a tactical problem rather than a strategic one. When the March change hit, the meta strategy for Indagare did not need to be reinvented. The foundation was not built around Meta's measurement assumptions. It was built around our customer, and the messaging at each stage of her journey stayed the same. The infrastructure stayed the same. The campaign architecture stayed largely the same. What we did do, though, was add in one new tactical layer because the algorithm had shifted in a way that rewarded a kind of content we weren't doing as much of. And that's what we added was the much more entertaining, non-salesy video content at the top of funnel, really entertaining for our particular customer avatar and super I mean, relative, but also, you know, portraying the exact life stages, issues, lifestyle, etc., that our customers are living in right now. And so it's not generic creator content. It's not just talking head girl in her car. It's content that was built for our actual customer in her actual life, designed to stop the scroll and earn genuine engagement. So why we added it, Meta's algorithm, particularly after the Andromeda update at the end of 2024 and the subsequent machine learning changes through last year, 2025, now places enormous emphasis on engagement signals, how quickly you can stop the scroll and how engaged that viewer is. Watch time, but also saves, shares, comments, as well. And these signals are how the algorithm learns who is interested in your brand, who to retarget with warm audiences to expand into. And they are fundamentally what feeds the rest of your ad funnel. The brands who are winning on Meta right now are the brands feeding the algorithm the engagement signal at scale at that top of funnel, so that the algorithm has the really rich data to work with through the rest of the customer journey. Here's the convenient bit for premium brands and the part I really want you to hear. Those engagement signals don't have to be salesy content. And in fact, salesy content earns less engagement than entertaining brand-led content for premium audiences. The kind of content the algorithm now needs is exactly the kind of content premium brands should already be making. Entertaining, educating, genuinely useful, slightly aspirational, recognizably premium, not the buy now, buy now, buy now. More like, this is who we are, this is what we know, here is something you'll find genuinely interesting, etc. Which is frankly the kind of content most premium brands have been afraid to invest in for years because it does not sell directly. But it turns out in 2026, the content that does not sell directly is the content that makes the rest of your sales work. I think for premium positioning, you don't want to compromise your premium positioning to add this layer because, the messaging in the UGC content needs to be the same messaging that lives across the whole brand journey, but just packaged in a more entertaining format. The format might be new, but the messaging should not be new. And that's the difference between make TikTok style content for Meta, which often compromises premium positioning, and feed the algorithm what it now needs, but in ways that stays really consistent with everything else that you're doing. And that resonates with your audience, right? I mean, who wants to go on to social media and just watch ads all the time? Like, that's boring and it's not engaging. So the result for Indagare since March, new customer acquisition is way up, revenue is up, MER, our marketing efficiency ratio, is up, without compromising the premium positioning because the messaging foundation did not shift. So the takeaway here, after all of that, is do the foundational work. Understand your customer at the level where you genuinely know what she needs to know, understand, and believe at each stage of your journey. Build your messaging, your infrastructure, and your campaign architecture around that. And when the platforms change, and they will, the foundation doesn't need to move. You just adapt tactically without panicking strategically. So before we close out, it has been a long session, but hopefully useful. I'm going to give you 3 concrete things you can actually do this week. Absolutely no obligation, nothing to buy, just 3 actions that will start to give you a real picture of where your strategic leverage actually lives. The first thing is to stop comparing your pre-March and post-March metadata directly. They are 2 different measurement systems and you are not looking at the same thing. Start a new baseline from mid-March onwards and evaluate performance from there. If you want a more truthful read on your actual marketing performance while you do that, pull your blended conversion acquisition cost and your marketing efficiency ratio for the last 60 days from Shopify, not from Meta. Those 2 numbers will tell you what is really happening in your business, regardless of what your Meta dashboard ever says. Second thing you can do is to spend half an hour reading your last 20 to 30 customer reviews back to back and pay really close attention to the language. What specific words do your high value customers use? What do they say almost stopped them from buying? What do they mention as the thing that finally made them trust you enough to go ahead? That language is messaging gold. It is also almost certainly different from and more truthful than the language you currently have in your ad copy. The gap between what your customers say and what your ads say is one of the most reliable diagnostics I know, and unlike anything Meta has shown you on a dashboard since March, that gap is entirely in your control. The third thing that you can do is to pick one stage of your customer's buying journey, the moment she's first considering whether to even visit your site, the moment she's deciding whether to actually pull the trigger and buy, or maybe the moment she's deciding whether to come back for a second purchase. Just pick any one stage and then ask yourself honestly, do I genuinely know what she needs to know, understand, and believe at that moment? If you can answer cleanly, brilliant. That stage of your journey is sound. If you can't answer cleanly, and most premium brand founders cannot because nobody has ever made them think about it this way, that is where the strategic work starts. And it is the work that, once done, lets the platforms keep changing without your business getting whipsawed every quarter. These three things together will start to shift how you think about all of this. Not just about Meta, not just about the March change, but about what your actual marketing leverage is and where it lives. So let's close out with the harder truth and the hope of this episode together. The harder truth is you cannot outrun this treadmill. The platforms will keep changing. They are going to change again, probably most months. Some of those changes will help your brand, some of them will not. Either way, you cannot chase them all. But the hope is you do not have to. The premium brands navigating this period well are not the ones running faster. They're the brands that have stopped chasing platforms entirely and started building on what doesn't change: their customer, her psychology, what she actually needs to know, understand, and believe to trust them with her money. That foundational work is harder initially than running another ad test. It is slower than launching a new campaign, but it compounds. And it makes the next attribution change and the one after that and the one after that tactical problems rather than existential ones. Now, if you would like the diagnostic tool that we use here to help premium brands figure out where their actual bottleneck is right now, whether it's the messaging at one stage of the journey, the infrastructure at another, or whatever the case may be in your business, then you can grab our free marketing reset kit. We have designed and written it specifically for premium e-commerce brands, and it is free. It'll take you about 15 minutes. It is the 3-part bottleneck framework and a 10-question self-assessment, 5 things that you can do this week with your own data, and a 90-day priority plan built around your specific situation so that you can tailor it to you. So we'll pop the links to that in the show notes. Or you can head to productpreneurmarketing.com/reset and you can download a copy of that for yourself for free. But that's it for this week. Thank you for listening to this big, meaty episode. I hope you found it useful. Of course, if you have found it useful and you know another founder who might need to know this stuff, please share it with them. But for now, I will look forward to being in your ears as always again next week. Bye for now.